Guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident Podcast. Have a great show for you right after this. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident Podcast, a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. We are happy to have our favorite co-host, Sambaza, host and creator of the Sambaza Podcast. He is a three-time nominee for Best African Diasporan Podcast by the APVA, and he is from the Republic of Kenya in East Africa. He has been a presenter at the Afros and Audio Podcasts Festival discussing Pan-Africanism, and he will be an ambassador and a presenter as well for the 2024 Afros and Audio Podcast Festival. Welcome, Sambaza. Hey.
Hey, thank you, Jen. Drum rolls. I'm here. How many days we got to go to the festival? I think a few days, like 40.
I haven't started, but yeah, we should make a graphic for that. The
Yeah.
countdown. That'll be a lot of fun, and we'll make some posts about that. You are a ambassador for that upcoming festival, so it'll be a good time.
All right. So, what do you have for us today? I am really curious.
Yeah, so before we had some conversations about the upcoming election and inspiring voters and what makes an inspired and engaged voter. So I want to continue that conversation. And we have a special guest today. So we're really excited about that, to bring someone in who's actually been a former political candidate to shed light on the political process and how voters can be properly informed and engaged getting out there this coming November.
Okay. I think that will help because coming from what we are seeing in this political climate, people need to make informed decisions. And I think from the outside looking in is different. We're just the voters, and then we need to know how we should vote and where our options are and what to look for in a candidate. And it's best with the guest that we're having today. I think it's going to be awesome that we're going to have our guest today. So I can't wait to start this show. I mean, we had a lot of conversation before this. It was like, wow, we just had to get started.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move into introducing our guests. So, again, guys, if you're joining us on the replay, welcome, or joining us live, we appreciate it. And feel free to make a comment as well for those watching us in real time. We appreciate you tuning into the content so that we can continue doing shows like this that we enjoy to do. So again, welcome to Woke by Accident and the Sambaza Podcast collaboration. We do have a special guest. He has been a former mayoral candidate in the city of Hammond, Louisiana, and an active member of the Hammond community. And their decision to run for office a few years ago sparked a significant moment in the political landscape. So, on this episode, we're going to explore their perspective on the political process, the motivation behind their candidacy, and get advice on being an informed and engaged voter. So, even if you're not a resident of the city of Hammond, we are sure that you'll find interest in getting some background information from someone directly tapped into the inner workings of the local political process. So, with that, we will bring Mr. Jay Kelly.
Hey everyone, hey y'all, hey Sambaza
Welcome,
Jig.
welcome.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Welcome in.
So let's dive right into it. We're glad that you joined in. I know it's been a long day for you, but we appreciate you having taken some time off to grace us on this show. Really appreciate your time. Uh, to start off, can you share a little bit about your background initially what inspired you to get involved into politics?
Well, on a grassroots level, I've been involved with serving people for most of my life. It's kind of, starts off with my mother, who was really instrumental in my community with programs that were community based, like nutrition programs, making sure in the summer students and children had nutritious meals. Advocacy for first generation college students and people who just had not had the opportunities generationally, right, that some others have, and yet we have to compete on the same playing field, but it's not really level. And so most of my coming up under my mother and others in my family, educators, recognizing some of those inequalities and the structural um, or the systemic um, institutions and processes that kind of lead to keeping things imbalanced. It led me to education. One, I've been taught and have been raised that education is a great equalizer, and to some extent that still rings true. Um, but obviously the laws, obviously the policies, the procedures, the zones, zoning, when you get into like in neighborhoods, what's commercial versus what's residential, and those type of things, how businesses are able to flourish in some areas, or you're able to create businesses in some areas, and in some places it stays the same forever. And those type of things just didn't sit right with me. And so starting off as an educator, being in a classroom and working to do what I could to address some of those inequities was one part of the battle. And then I was like, there's only so much I can do with 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds. And that fight is still important, but there's an adult population out there. There's a there's structure in place that needs to be addressed. And so that's what led me to working to get more on the policy side of things. So to get into politics for me was more about getting on the policy side of the society, on the side that's able to make decisions about where can a business go, who gets those type of contracts, what type of laws or what type of rules, rather, even an executive branch obviously is not legal, but what type of rules, what type of decision making is in place, what type of committees are there that's really running this thing. And as I begin to uncover those things, and it's like, okay, we need to have people in positions to influence that, right? Sometimes it's not a mayor, sometimes it's not a senator, sometimes it's not a congress or whoever that makes a decision. The actual decision, it's the person they put on that board, right? Who's on the recreation board? Who's on the arts board? Who's on who's on who are in these different positions that have the influence on what businesses come in, what type of activities we have, what type of recreation we have, and so really working to understand that it takes someone being in a position to really put the folks there that make the decisions and ultimately that determine the outcomes. And that's what got me into politics is really working to be on the policy side of things.
Okay.
Yes, and along those same lines, I want to talk about that interconnection. So share with us the role that you feel that local government should play in influencing state and national policies.
That's an interesting question, Jen. What role does local government play in influence? And well, I tell you what, it's kind of reverse, right? It's what influence does local government have locally, right?
Okay.
It's and that influence that we have locally, that influence on those people locally, that's what influences national. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to get the the influence to flow up without there first being a base. And people have to understand that at the grassroots level, what we do locally is what reverberates. When people say, hey, this is what's going on in Missouri, this is what the people in St. Louis want, on the ground, on the streets, right? We saw in Ferguson when that happened. If I'm not mistaken, we saw a turnover in some of the local government there after a while. There were some people who were entrenched, but once after Mike Brown and after the events of that took place after his death, and the riots or uprisings or whatever we want to call those things, it led to more political awakeness, right? At
It
the
did.
beginning, it that didn't come from the top, It started at that grassroots level with that inspired a movement, that inspired young people to get involved in political and to see that, hey, it's the rules we have here. We have a lot of unjust policing taking place right here. And those people stood up
Yes.
and that's gonna, and now I think we've seen someone out of that movement, if I'm not mistaken. This is kind of off the dome, but if I'm not mistaken, one young lady made her way up to Congress,
She
and
did.
now she's in Congress, but she was a part of that movement. So that's how local government, that's how it's affected locally. It's when, I think it's when a lot of times when local government doesn't do its job, and you see people say, wait, no, this is what we need. This is what we want. This is what's been going on that's unjust. This is how we're going to attack this. And not only am I going to attack it here, I'm going to take it. And now that I've learned this part of the game, now I'm going to take it up a level. And so it's about learning the game. And I think at the local level, that's where we learn the game. That's the easiest battlefield,
Yes.
right? Is in your backyard. And when you master that, let's take it up.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because a lot of people still feel like my vote doesn't matter. But when in that example you gave, that was like breaking record breaking numbers. The top had no choice but to pay attention, and it was national news all over. Pushing out a 20-year family dynasty out of a particular political office, or when another person who got into politics inspired by the uprising in Ferguson pushed out a 28-year sitting, white person. That was national news because, and that's, like you said, grassroots campaign. But when you have those kind of numbers, so it just shows you that our voices really do matter, even on a grassroots level.
Yeah, your voice matters when you use it.
Hmm.
People say their voice don't matter. That's usually the people who aren't talking. And your voice matters when you use it. If enough people use their voice, then it's going to start to matter because more people are going to hear what you're saying and more people are going to identify with that. More, it's going to resonate, and that's where the momentum starts. But if we all just sit in our living rooms and just talk about the system and the man and the this and the that,
Hmm.
that doesn't resonate. Sambaza and I were having a conversation in a kitchen, and he's like, "This needs to be heard." And that's how we get here. But if I'm quiet, if I'm just sitting there drinking sweet tea and not and not engaging, and if he's not listening and seeing something that identifies him, then how do we get a message out? And that's the same thing in Ferguson. It's the same thing in Hammond. It's the same thing in Dallas. Wherever we are, we have to speak, and we can't be afraid to speak our minds, speak our voices, even if it's just with our people. But take it out and make it bigger. And when you take it out, then others have no choice but to hear. They may try to ignore, but if enough of us speak, if enough of us are loud enough, they have to hear us.
I have to throw this in because this is what got me started. Um, the way you started off your campaign, you have a story behind it till the way you got yourself into being where you are for candidate to be a mayor, and also you've also run for the school board. But there was something that you did. I think you need to share that story of how it all started.
Yeah, well, and you all keep introducing me as a former candidate, and I guess that means I lost, right? But there's value in losing, right? And I didn't lose because there are times when well, I didn't win the election, but I didn't lose. And so the way it started, I'd been a part of political campaigns before for myself. It started off with a school board run shortly after my mother's passing. When some of you and some of our listeners will be able to identify with the fact that when you have change in your life, significant change, it makes you think like, what should I do? What's my purpose? And when my mom passed, who'd been a real solid community member, then I felt like it was up to me to like not let that dream die, and you hear people talk about don't let Dr. King's dream die or don't let this die, and so that was the spark, right? And so I ran on my own, not knowing anything. And to me, that was probably my best campaign because I was really naive about a lot of things that go on in politics, you know. So I wasn't out there trying to trick anybody, and I wasn't expecting to be tricked. I was just out there. I'm gonna give my great ideas and knock on enough doors and share my ideas, and that's what's gonna work. Well, what that does, one, is it puts you into a spotlight. And those votes you get, somebody else looks at those votes like currency. It's like he's got 1,000 people that are with him, and so that casts you into a whole nother world where you start to get used a little bit. They want you here, they want you there, they want your endorsement, they want things. And so I shied away from that world for a bit. And then in years later, I was in my hometown of Hammond, Louisiana. I don't live there now. And um and I was looking at the recreation at the different parks that were in what are the predominantly Black neighborhoods in my city. And just to give you even more background, my city has right now 50% of the children in that city live in poverty. Okay, so that just gives you an idea. The local school system is ranked 62nd, 62 out of 71 in the state of Louisiana. So it's low. Louisiana is ranked 47 out of 50. So where I'm from is literally one of the most poorly educated, impoverished areas in the country. Okay, and I've grown up there, and there are in every neighborhood there's a park, right? A playground, I would say, not a park. There's a playground. And one day and I've grown up and I've seen these playgrounds be populated. I've seen people at these baseball fields. I've seen that. And then I become an adult and I see these same parks still exist, but they're abandoned. The grass is growing, things like that. And so one day I went around and I made videos for whatever reason. I went and I made videos at every park, and I just spoke, and this was just for Facebook, and I spoke to the people, and I was like, why does this park look worse than it looked when I was young? It's in the same note. Why is it worse? Why is this grass not cut? Why do we not have local teams in this park? Why don't we have soccer here so that parents don't have to take their children to some park way out of the city limits? Why isn't this stuff happening here? And making those videos, and then shortly after, someone called me back out to the park a week later, and they said, hey, we're doing something kind of like what y'all do. We're doing something for the community, and the bathrooms are locked. And so I went out there and I made a video, and I don't think I told you this part. I made a video saying, here we got people from the community getting together at a public park that we pay taxes for, and the bathrooms are locked. They're not even allowing us to use the restroom. And it was from there that a grassroots movement started, because I always said after that first part, after that first run, and where things got a little, I won't say conniving, but where what I just talked about, how people start pulling you in different directions. I said I would not run for office again based on political powers trying to influence me to do it, because everyone has an agenda. Said if I ever did it again, it's going to be a movement of the people. And so when I made those videos, the people, the ones who were getting locked out of the restrooms, the ones whose children weren't being allowed to play, who didn't have adequate recreation, the ones who had to pass by this park with the grass growing up high, those people started saying, Jay Kelly for mayor. And I was like, that's the group. That's the ones that I want to fuel anything I would do. I had no intentions of running for mayor when I made those videos. I was actually thinking about moving, which is why I made the videos. And so fast forward, um, as that began to grow, I said, the only way that I will proceed with this, I don't want to get involved in all of the tricks of politics. I don't want to have to, you know, pick out a bunch of sign colors. I don't want to get clever with anything. I want to do this. I don't know if y'all know much about how much audience knows about hip hop, but Jay-Z. At one point, Jay-Z, before he dropped the Black album, he said he always wanted to make an album where he just put it out. He didn't have to market it. He didn't have to do anything. It was just going to be black. It's going to be the Black album. And I said, I'm going to run for office like that. I want to just have a plain campaign that is fueled by the people. And that's why the campaign slogan became, "Why not us?" And the why not us was about why can't this community, why can't these people do great things? Why can't that happen? And I made my signs all black, Jen, with white writing, and the sign just simply said, "Why not us?" J. Kelly Mayer. I did that just to keep myself from getting involved. I didn't want red, white, and blue and white, and pink and green, or whatever. And so, and 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 that was the genesis of the run. It was fueled by the people. It was done really simply, and it took off from there because one group, the African Americans started saying, "Why not us? Why not us?" And it became a rallying cry for the underprivileged, and I didn't shy away from that, because if that's what the people wanted, if the people wanted to feel like they were being excluded, like they needed to have a voice, then that's the direction we were going. I wanted to run a race that was truly for and about the people and nobody else.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
And also, when you said, when you talk about losing a campaign or losing a seat, I never look at it. I've been through it before, and what it tells you is it gives you an idea of, like you said, who is with you, and then you have a map, a roadmap, so to speak. If you go back to it again, you have a chance of saying, okay, I made it with these particular people, now I can make it with these other people that I have on my base. So it's never a loss. That's why politicians will always say, I'm not out, I'll make a comeback. And I think that's one of the most important things that I have learned in politics and going into elections. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But your intentions matter, right?
Mhm.
My intention was not to be a politician. My intention was to create change. And um, when you have that, when you go to create change and you rally people, you do have such a source of power. You have people who are willing to go in your direction, and that's a important thing, and it's a precious thing to have folks that you represent. But some politicians want people to get in line with what they think, with what the politician thinks. I wanted to be more in line with what the people think and what they needed, and I felt that I was articulating that. But what you run into, and what's going to be relevant to voters these days, is you still have to be educated. You still
Okay.
have to know, as a constituency, where to vote. Am I registered? How do I get others involved? Like, you have to do more. I had a grassroots campaign, but it has to be bigger than the grassroots, right? President Obama, one of his strengths was he had a great grassroots campaign, but that
Mhm.
grassroots campaign was spearheaded, and it had other minds. It was able to feed into the next thing. It was able to feed into the machine that he had, that was in the organization that was on his side, and they were able to leverage those folks and make sure that those voters were educated, make sure that those folks knew where to vote, make sure that those people had rides to the polls, and those
Right.
type of things. You have to have you have to, once you get them, you got to educate them. And I would say that was part of the the not the that was something that was lacking in my campaign, was having enough of the resource, because you can't, as much as I wanted to be the Black Album, I wasn't Jay-Z yet, right? You still got to have the infrastructure there. One person
Mhm.
can't do it all. And while I had a good team, I needed more sharp minds at the table to help leverage all of these folks that we have ready to go. And so
Okay.
when you get people ready to go, now what are we going to do with them? And that's what's important. What are we going to do?
Right. Now I'm gonna
Mhm.
take these next two questions and sandwich them together, Sambaza, so follow along with me.
Mhm.
I love how your decision to get involved was a response into what was going on in your community, and I can definitely relate to that. In that playground that you were describing, sounds like several playgrounds here in St. Louis, and probably in you guys' cities too, because this is just something that happens in our neighborhoods. So, speaking about the voters, the people, the community. Wanted you to share on, voters who maybe this is their first time voter, or those young voters getting prepared, and they maybe not so versed in the candidates and things like that. And then also for maybe just undecided older type of voters.
Sorry, y'all hear noise. I'm in the
Oh, that's
city.
okay. That's all right.
Speaking of
Amien.
voters, uh, yeah, something major. We pray that they all right. Um,
Mhm.
the last part of your question, though, say that
Yeah.
again.
Oh yes. So just sharing your thoughts on advice to the younger or first time voters, or maybe older voters or community members who are undecided. Anything that you could offer as far as some engagement or advice? Who do I pick? Is my voice going to matter? I'm a first time voter versus someone, maybe they're not a young person per se, but they're undecided, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
first of all, you got to make up your mind that you're going to do something, right? I think last night, I don't know when this is going to air, but last night the Democratic National Convention's going on, and I think former First Lady Michelle Obama said, "Y'all got to do something." All these claps, and I remember President Obama was like, "Don't boo, vote." So
yeah.
first thing we got to do is we got to move this thing out of the living room, out of the bedroom, out of the church, or wherever it is where we're just talking about it, and just make up our mind we're going to do something. From there, we need to be educated on what our candidates are talking about, and be willing ultimately to stand on what we believe. Far too often votes are bought. Far too often people are voting just because it's the way my mom and them used voted. Far too often people are just voting ignorantly. And I don't really care which way you vote, but I think it should be informed. And one, it should happen, and two, it should be informed. And I think that in order to do that, people got to have to challenge,
Hmm.
challenge. What is this person saying? You're not going to agree with everything that a politician says, including
Right.
me. You're not. I'm not a politician, but including whatever I say, right? But are they 70% there? Are they 50%?
Hmm.
Where are they in relation to what it is that I'm looking for? And one reason that I think, and this may go backwards a little bit, Jen. One reason that I think a lot of people are apathetic to the system is, one, we get used to just complaining about things and not
Right.
actually thinking about solutions. You
Okay.
have to make your mind up, is what is it that I would like to see? Is it a problem that this park is abandoned? Okay, if
Hmm.
so, is there someone out here talking about doing something to fix that? Is it a problem that our schools are in shambles? Okay, is there somebody out here talking about the schools? Is it a problem that our healthcare is messed up? Is there somebody talking about that and has something that could fix that? You aren't the candidate. That's one thing I'll tell people. You aren't the candidate. You're not going to find somebody. Your solution might be, we're going to revolutionize and change this and that. Well, there may not be a politician who's doing it the way you want to do it, but are they addressing that issue? That's one,
Hmm.
or that's two or three. Well, I forgot where I'm at now. But the other thing is then knowing your status. One
Hmm.
thing that I ran into in my campaign, where there were a lot of people fired up who weren't registered to vote.
Hmm.
You know, and then there were a lot of people, and this happened on election day. They were sending me videos who were registered to vote but did not know their polling location. And so they go to one spot, and then they wait in line, and they get in there, or not even wait in line. They wait in line, they get up to the front, and then they find out they're not even registered at this location. They have to go way somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm glad they did away with that. Or I don't know if that's just here or now that you can pretty much go. Really?
In the South, in Louisiana, it's not like that. You have
Okay.
to
It
vote
used to
where you
be,
are.
but now you can. Yeah, I think in by the county, here you can go anywhere
And
now.
that's good, but the
Hmm.
important point of it all is to know. You got
Right.
to know.
Yeah, I've been an
Yeah.
election judge, volunteer before, so yeah. I mean, and you see the different problems. I mean, we've had father son with the same name, and it's all kind of issues come up. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, so we got to know,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's important. One, decide what that you are going to be involved, you're going to do. Two, what is it that you want to see, and then and get educated about those politicians who are in alignment. They may not be in 100% agreement, but who are in alignment. And three, know your status. Where do you fit into this? Can you vote? Where do you vote? How do you vote? When do you vote? All of those things. Because as we know, for a lot of us, it doesn't take much of an excuse for us not to do anything. We show up, oh, this ain't my place. I'm back to the house. We show up, oh,
Mm-hmm.
y'all saying, I'm back to the house. You know, and by that time
Yeah.
it's too late. And so we just can't afford. We got
Mm-hmm.
to make our minds up. We got to decide we're going to do something, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then we got to actually make sure we know that we have to be in position to execute. You know, be in position to execute.
That's so true. And I volunteered with an organization that, and it was nonpartisan, and we actually just like make sure that there's nothing that prohibits you from voting. So, like maybe you're elderly, you're walking with a cane, you don't have to stand, And I think a lot of people don't know that if you require special, special needs, or you have special needs, accommodations can be made for you. So you should not let that prevent you from going in.
Yeah, you should. But that again, that comes with being educated about your status, you know, or being knowledgeable at least about your status and what's possible. If you wait to the day of, it's not going to happen, and it's just it's paramount whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Kenya or anywhere. It's paramount that you understand and know what to do when it's time to execute.
Okay.
You got to know. You got to know where to go. You got to know your status. You got to know what to do.
All right. I got a couple of I got a couple of questions, but I'll stick to the first ones here. We talked about or we've referenced before the church and family, and then I'm gonna quote you. You said people vote ignorantly. But before we get to the first one, let's talk about the church and how the church has a role to play in terms of getting people out there to vote. Now, when we talk about family, I am going to throw this. I think we've done it in several episodes before where we talked about the way our family, we call each other in the beginning, the morning of, and someone does the research and then tells you, hey, we're going to vote for this person, this person, this person, this person, because somebody has looked at everything and said, okay, this is the best candidate for us. Then lastly, uh, explain when you say voting ignorantly, what you meant by that. I know let's not take in a bad concept, but it was someone tell us that we don't vote right. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could go down the three of them: church, family, and voting ignorantly. If you could explain how, in your own words, what you think about that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interconnected, you know, church, family, and then individuals, right? In the Black community, a lot of what we get, or historically, a lot of our decisions, a lot of our direction has come from the church, and I mean the direction
Mm-hmm.
outside of the message of Christ, right? Like that's one thing. Christianity, that's what the church is for, or whatever, the mosque, synagogue, whatever. But there's a religious function, and
Hmm.
then there's the function, there's the guidance for what this means, what I need to do socially, like, what's going to impact our area where I'm from. And I know St. Louis is like this as well. You know, the nicest building, the most influential institution in the community is the church, you know. And we run into a lot of times, I see where pastors will be politically connected. They will pray at prayer breakfasts. They will attend mayors' luncheons and things. They will attend mayor council. They'll be on advisory boards. They'll do a lot of things, and then they will say, "But I stay out of politics." You know, we can't tell you how to vote. You know, and things like that. And then they'll do, and what that does, I think a lot of times it leaves the people confused. You know,
Okay.
because I see you with the mayor, I see you shaking hands with this politician. This person comes and visits the church. And so it kind of looks like you like him, but you don't say anything. And so we're just kind of left lost. And also, churches are in a weird position because, having tax exempt status a lot of times, and the whole, and the way that works, a lot of times the faith-based organizations who receive any type of government money, you certainly can't speak on things. And so we're in this weird dance, where we have politicians come to our church, we attend their prayer practices, we go to their inaugurations, we do all of these things, but we can't say anything about them. We can't tell our people who we have a captive audience every Sunday, we can't say, these are the things that are important, and we're going to go for the person who votes for this. And that's really what I think the message could be. You don't have to say, vote for mayor such and such. You have to say, vote for this person. But you can say, vote for our children. You can
Mhm.
say, vote for our recreation. You can say, vote for our schools. You can push people. And I think that churches have an obligation, because we have the audience, we have them captive,
Okay.
and we do a disservice to them to not mention it and not help them make decisions, or at least be informed on the issues, while at the same time rubbing shoulders with with the people who are on the ballot. So that's a confusing thing, and I think that it's that we have to walk that line better in the church. And I'm a member of church, right? I'm not like throwing shade at churches. I'm as in it as anybody, but we have to, I believe, decide who we're going to be. The
Mhm.
civil rights movement was born in the church. The civil rights movement was led by the church. You don't have the changes in this country without the church. What if Dr. King said, you know what, I'm staying out of politics? You know, he was all politics. He had to be involved. Sorry, y'all, but he had to be involved. He had to be involved, or it didn't happen. If he didn't go into the White House and talk to Lyndon B. Johnson and say, these are the things that we need to happen for our people, it doesn't happen. He
Right.
didn't. He didn't all of a sudden hide and be like, "I'm a preacher, can't talk about this with the president." No,
Mhm.
this is who you talk about it with. So if you're not going to let the people know, then the church needs to be that influence, because the church is a very powerful organization, and we
Oh,
get really,
absolutely.
really weak. So that's
Mhm.
one. The second part of your question was the family. So, in a lot of places, people vote based on the elders in their families. And that is commendable. I'm not going to knock that, but I will say that young people still owe it to themselves to be educated and to help their elders sometimes to see something that maybe the elders don't see. As I get older, or you get older, if I have grown up with a certain politician and I think that that person is nice, me telling all my children that that's who they ought to vote for may not be the best thing for my children, because I'm saying this because I know this person. I'm saying this because this person can get a favor through, I can get a favor through this person. But what about the next 4, 8, 20 years? Who's most important for my children? And so that's where it gets a little precarious, when we
Mhm.
rely on our family members and people like that, these I mean, not outsiders, these inside people that we trust, to give us guidance, because sometimes the thoughts have not evolved. And so I believe it's important as families that we leverage all of the resources within the families, and that we trust our elders to be respectful of the future needs and not just where we are now. And then it comes that back down to the individual. And I talked about that ignorance. If you just listen, if and I think it's kind of a natural progression. If we have a church or church leadership that's ambiguous, if we have family members who may or may not be considering the whole picture and not just the way they've gone, I voted for them and I voted for his daddy and I voted for the, if we don't have that, it's important for you to know for yourself, and to be able to make decisions. Now, if you don't know for yourself, then yeah, you probably need to go with what Uncle said. You probably need to go go with what your auntie and them talking about, because you at least made your mind up to do something. But voters should at least know what they're doing. You pray, even if what you know is, I don't like either one of these people. But you know that, no, I don't like either one of these, but this one at least aligns more with where we're going. Okay. Did that answer your question, Sambaza?
Yes,
Like, I don't
it
want to
did.
be all over the place, man.
No, it did.
Uh,
It gave it the requirement that it that was supposed to. Now, Jen, do you have a question before I ask the other ones?
No, go ahead.
All right. So now we have these other three things I want to also add on to that once we talk about it. You've said, you know, voters have this difficulty going into voting. Now, we just started with the church telling them the family and then ignorant voting. Some of the things are not, and especially when we talk about people who are sort of like us, black people, when we try to get into these spaces of voting and get our word known, there's something called redlining, gerrymandering,
Mm,
and voter apathy and suppression. All
mm.
these play a factor in how we go and vote. It doesn't matter whether you're a young voter or you're an old voter. These three things can definitely create a mark on how you vote, where you will vote, or if you even vote at all. What do you say to all to if you sum up all these three? If you can talk about them as it relates to the upcoming elections or even future elections.
I would say it's incumbent upon community leaders, anyone who has that knowledge, to share with young people and to share with all of your constituents, really, um, the impact of things like the red line, the gerrymandering, and making sure that, and in doing what you can to combat those. Oh my goodness, the lights went out.
Oh no.
We may have to. Can I go audio or something to finish this? I know we're live on TV, but can y'all still see me?
No, we'll just go ahead. Just go on and talk.
All right, I know, I know. I'm
We're
sorry, y'all. I'm
wrapping
at a
it up.
hotel. They cut the
We're
lights off, but it's wholly important that people on before election day that we start to find out where that we identify the zones, the districts, the precincts, and how those
Mhm.
things are drawn. Because in a lot of locations, they, from my experience, will draw these lines in a way that exclude particular blocks of folks who are going to vote a certain way, who they believe will vote a certain way. In my
Mm,
community, the lines were drawn in a way where, remember, all those grads, I had tremendous support, but those
mhm,
people were not either allowed or in position to vote for me because years before, these lines were drawn in a way that would prevent a mass group from this neighborhood of voting for one candidate. And so, yes, you live 5 blocks from the center of town, but you're out of the city limits. Whereas somebody else who lives further is in the city limits. So it's important for city councilmen, for people who are involved in the city government to make sure that the people understand and know that you need to check and you need to see, and if there's any changes need to be made, we need to make some changes. Hey, why is this outside the limits but this is in? And we need to push those things. Otherwise, once we get to election day, it's too late. When we get to election day, there's nothing really we can do about those things.
oh, right, right. Okay. This has been awesome, and sorry about the lighting, guys.
And they cut the
I know the
lights out
message
on
is
me.
still there. The message is still there. They can turn off the lights, but the message is still there.
there you go.
Um, it was. I guess we're gonna wrap up and say it's been a nice conversation that we've had today, and you've given us all we need, the ammo and knowledge and all that we need to kind of figure out ourselves when we go to vote. On any election, be it from the school board all the way up to the presidential elections. Uh, can you share with us how people can contact you? I know you're not retired. You're still out there. How can people support you or get involved in any future endeavor that you want to put out there? So this is your chance to kind of give us your spiel.
Hey, well, I don't have a whole lot politically going on, but I am always interested in connecting with minds who are intent, who want to change the world. You know, whether it is through lifestyle changes, whether it's through politics, whether it's through sports. It all goes together. I can be found on Instagram under J Kelly. That's just JKELLY
Okay.
underscore coach.
Okay.
That coach is not just for basketball. Again, it's for everything. It's for everything. And while I don't have a ton of content there, you can certainly insta message me. and I'll respond, and we can build from there. Most of the work I do, I don't have much time to pull out the camera. I don't think to pull out the camera. I just roll up the sleeves and go.
Yeah.
I appreciate this podcast. I hope that it reaches far and wide. And I just want people to understand that whatever you want to do or whatever change you want to see in the future, we got to start on it now. We can't wait till the November election. Do it now. We can't wait till 2025 or 6 or 8 or whatever. We got to start now. Know if you're registered. Know where you vote at. Look at how those lines are drawn. Push back on the leader, the elders in your family. Sometime push back on the church. Be educated, and put yourself in position to make a change. You do matter. We all matter. I've been that person that's like, oh, my vote doesn't matter and all this stuff, but it doesn't matter as long as you don't do anything. You're right, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do something, it
Mm-hmm.
matters. And if you say it doesn't matter, if you do something, you say it doesn't matter, then you're saying you don't matter. And I know you matter. I know that there's an impact that you can make. So step out there and do something, and I guarantee you it will matter.
Amen. Amen. That's very powerful right there. All
Definitely.
right, Jen, take us home.
Yeah, and I just want to share that organization that people, if you see something going on that is not correct, or like I mentioned, the example of maybe you need support if you're um disabled or what have you, there accommodations can be made. It's protectthevote.net, and it's election protection. And I've actually volunteered with them. They're a nonpartisan organization, and so be my, if you're looking for someone to volunteer with, that's the organization. I think Solana, when we had her 2 weeks ago, mentioned League of Women Voters. There's a lot of different ways to get involved, but I definitely wanted to share that message. We appreciate Mr. Kelly, Coach Kelly, sharing with us. So please know that we appreciate you, sir.
Have me back.
And
Have me back. We got a
yeah,
lot to talk about. It don't
please.
have to just be politics. We can go into family, whatever y'all want to go into. Have me back. I really appreciate what y'all are
Okay,
Oh,
doing.
for sure.
definitely.
Yeah, we can get into some Jay Z.
Let's do that. The Rock is in
Oh,
the
before we
building.
forget, we gotta say Ed Campbell was here and
Yes.
say peace family. Thank you so much, Ed, for joining us, and
Yeah,
anyone else who joined us.
for sure. Shout out to Ed, brother Ed. All right. Um. Yes. Okay.
All
So,
right.
so we do hope that you all found our conversation inspiring and enlightening. That it enlighten you. So please we encourage you to share with your friends, family, colleagues. Our collective awareness and advocacy play a crucial role in creating positive change. So please stay tuned for more additional engaging content, and we look forward to continuing to have these important conversations. So, okay. So again, thank you for being a part of the episode. If you're watching this on the replay or audio, we appreciate you, and take care.